Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Enlighten the Youth. This is episode number 3, and today we're speaking with Pelletier, an award-winning guitar player and recording artist. He gives some advice for young musicians looking to get into the industry, as well as some of his stories from on tour. Tune in. Now, what first got you into music, and what inspired you to begin playing guitar? Because, as you can tell, we're surrounded by guitars.
Yeah, lots of guitars in here.
Yeah, so you could give a brief intro to yourself, as well as what got you inspired to start off in the first place.
Okay, yeah, you betcha. My name's Pelletier. I'm glad to be here. Just want to say that I think one of the biggest things that got me into music was me and my young friends. We got into Kiss. It was kind of our big thing because they wore makeup and they just kind of had a thing, and that's kind of what got us into music, but not actually playing instruments. We just kind of made these cutout guitars and the cardboard. It was kind of funny. Did the whole makeup thing and all of that. And I still play music with one of my buddies from those days. Actually, he's a drummer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Drummer from Calgary. He lives in Calgary now. We grew up in Saskatchewan, but he's his name's Jarrett, and so we did that growing up as kids, and there was a lot of musicians actually where I grew up in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. So it was kind of interesting because everybody was really into music. There was, you either were into hockey or music. It was kind of like those were the big sort of things that you could do back there. There wasn't a lot to do, so we got into music, and I got into playing guitar, and then Rush would have been the first sort of big influence as a actual beginning musician. It was maybe not the easiest music to play, but it inspired us in a way that we wanted to play music. So it was it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. So it was a rising scene at that time. Was it more rock and roll focused, or?
Yeah, I would say it was. Yeah, it was definitely rock focused. Like a lot of the bands that we were listening to were like Black Sabbath and Metallica and some of the really heavy metal bands and hard rock bands like AC/DC and that kind of stuff growing up. So yeah, we were more into that. There was the other world of pop music which we just weren't into.
Yeah.
We were mostly the rock guys. That stuff wasn't cool enough for us, right? So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's kind of what we were into.
And then when did you really start to take the music side of things seriously? Like, you saw there's potential that you can do something with this and actually make it almost a career in a sense.
Yeah, I think it was a lifelong dream for sure from the inception of playing guitar, right to now today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, just we started off, like I said, with a friend who lives in Calgary now. He played drums, and once we got a bass player and another guitar player, we started playing a lot. And we'd try and find, we mostly basement kind of trying to get things going and learning how to sort of craft the instrument, and we got into writing songs and doing all that, and it was so much fun.
That was awesome.
And then we just kind of had the dream of, it's like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be on stage rocking.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys, did you almost put together like a band in a sense?
Yeah, we did, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys would just play together, and then would people bring you out for gigs?
Yeah, back then there wasn't a lot of gigs, but we would put on our own little shows, and then they would have these battle of the bands, just sort of bring the community together, and there would be a whole bunch of bands would show up, just because there were so many young musicians there in PA, so it was kind of fun to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Then we sort of ventured out and played a little bit in Saskatoon, and then we came out here to Edmonton to play a couple of times, and so it was
that's awesome.
Kind of neat to be able to do that.
So as you were doing that, it was very much a growing scene, and was there lots of that in PA?
There was
That's Prince Albert, by the way, in Saskatchewan.
PA is short for Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. For the people that don't know, but
exactly.
it was a big scene back then, and even though I went on to play country music through the influence of an uncle of mine, he was Uncle Freddie. He played country music and kind of got me sort of into that genre.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of work in that genre, especially out here in Alberta.
Okay.
Even back in the early 90s kind of thing. So I kind of got into that and started just started playing professionally, and it just kind of fell into place that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, was there ever a point where you questioned the opportunity to actually take this to the next level, and it got rough patches and such?
Absolutely, yeah. It's never easy. Even after playing for so many years, it's not easy. Even I'm trying to get into the studio life now, which is not an easy game to get into either, and it's expensive and all of that stuff. So
that's awesome.
You get a lot of no's, and you get a lot of people who we'll hire other people. It's just a challenge, right?
Exactly. And how did you get over those rough patches? And what is like an example of one where things kind of dipped for a little bit, and then how did you get out of that?
I think it's more or less the ebb and flow throughout the whole year in general, to be honest with you. Like a lot of musicians will go through those little dry spells where, oh, I have, no work in January, but then all of a sudden you get really busy again, and festival season's very busy during the summer, and then there's a lot of things that go on in the fall as well.
Yeah.
So kind of, yeah, just kind of ebbs and flows. But yeah, there's definitely times when you feel like you get knocked down or you don't get much work or whatever might happen. But I think a lot of that can just happen to be like, obviously you got to be good at your craft and
Yeah.
kind of work at that first and foremost.
Yeah.
You got to be great at your instruments and work on timing and tuning and all those kinds of things that and being creative. It's a big player in there. But as far as like being a live musician goes, especially, you've got to be a really good person. That's what it kind of boils down to. A lot of guys will hire certain guys because they know they're a good hang and they're a good fit for their project or band or artist that they might be putting a band together for. So those are kind of that's a big factor. Yeah,
I guess because people don't really think about that, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's not all about the talent; it's also about who you are, and that determines where you'll go in the industry.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's a big thing, and just the drive that you have too, right? A lot of people have that ambition and that drive, especially artists. Especially nowadays in the country scene, it's mostly artists, not bands. So so they're sort of driven to create content, and write music, and come up with and then basically put bands together and that sort of thing, and then they're always looking for the best people that will support them and play underneath what they're doing. And that's a huge thing, right?
Yeah, and who were some of the first artists that you played for? I take it they're pretty. Like, did any of them blow up from at the same time as you, or because you're saying that one of your friends that was a drummer is also out playing drums now as well, right?
Yeah, he's still playing drums.
That's awesome.
As well. Yeah, you betcha.
So you guys play for big artists together?
We haven't played together for many years actually, but some of my other friends that I grew up with I still play with, and also a drummer, Chad Melcher. I played with him for a lot of years, playing with an artist named Adam Gregory. We played with him for probably 10 years or at least, and then we also played with Gord Bamford for quite a while.
Yeah.
So so that was still that sort of PA connection.
That's awesome.
One of the guys that I played with and still play with. So
that's awesome.
That's great.
How do you, for you personally, do you find that drive was almost innate and you had it from like being young? You knew this is what I want to do and you pushed to it, or did you find something that you had to constantly remind yourself, like, stick to this, stick to this, stick to this?
Yeah. I mean, I might not have thought of it that way, but it's probably there subconsciously. It's like, I just want to play, and I'm gonna keep trying to get better at the instrument. That was sort of the goal, was getting as good as you can at your craft, and then kind of from there sort of try and see where you could fall into place with artists, and it's a small it's a really small community of people, so word gets out. If you're a decent player, people are gonna find out about you.
Yeah.
And so
sure.
that happens too. That's a pretty big common sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like people know who you are, and it's like, hey, I heard of this guy. Is he good? Yeah, he's great, good person.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. So.
That's awesome. And what would you say is one of your major milestones for your way to where you are now? Like, you got a call from somebody and it's like, you're gonna come play for this guy, or something like that, where you're like, okay, like, I'm making progress here.
Yeah, that definitely happened throughout the years. To be honest, I would say one of my first sort of bigger opportunities was with a band from Vancouver. I got called again, it was another PA connection. I knew the guy that produced one of their albums. His name was Ken Burke, and lives in Vancouver, and he referred me to the band actually, and they called me, and this is way back in the 90s, and I went and auditioned for them. They came to Edmonton to do a show, and I was still living in Saskatchewan at the time. So I came all the way here to audition for them and got the gig, and I played that gig for a couple of years. So that was kind of a big milestone for sure, I think. And then when I got the call to do the Adam Gregory gig, that was a big milestone too. And probably the biggest thing was getting the opportunity to move to Nashville. So I lived there for a year, and it doesn't always last forever down there. It's a it's a tough grind down there.
Yeah.
But it's also it was also a great opportunity
Yeah.
to be able to do that, to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
So,
So when you say tough grind, do you just mean that there was lots of competition and people trying to do the same things down there?
yes.
So it's always one-upping each other.
Yeah, I mean it's not necessarily one upping, but it's definitely it's a clicky sort of thing to try and get going in a market like that when there's
Yeah.
so much talent, right?
Yeah.
So it's not always the most talented people that make it. Sometimes it's who they know and the connections they have with management teams and record labels and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's quite the
Yeah.
quite the deal.
Yeah. So if there was one thing that you wish you could change about the music industry, what would it be? Because I know that there's tiny things here and there, but from being actually enthralled in it yourself, what would you say?
Yeah, I think that sort of leads to the way I finished that last question was how the music industry is. A lot of people think, oh, it's not fair, and it's just all about connections and who you know. But definitely one thing I would change is if would love to make it not about money and just about music, not about
Exactly.
marketing, just about music.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see a lot of you see a lot of the big stars, and it's not that they're not good because they're obviously doing something right and people love them, and that's a huge thing. But there's a lot of artists that go unnoticed, unfortunately, and they don't get to make it to that next level. So it'd be nice to see some of the littler guys get a bigger chance kind
Yeah.
of thing, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be nice to see.
So for some of those very passionate artists that are looking to get paid for their passion, which type of I'm blanking here. What tips would you give for them to take that to the next level? Being a passionate artist that wants to start getting paid for what they do and grow what they love.
Yeah, I would say, I don't want to sound like I'm repeating myself, but obviously get as good as you can at music, listen to lots of different genres and and learn your craft, whatever instrument you play, whether
Yeah.
it be drums or be a vocalist or both. You could be a singer, guitar player, or whatever it might be, piano, keys, whatever.
Yeah.
I would say work on your craft first and foremost. Like spend lots of years just getting good at it. And the best way to get good at it is to record yourself, actually, and that's kind of what's gotten me into recording. I always knew I was a capable guitar player, but sometimes I'd listen back to what I played and I'm like, ooh, that's not very good.
Yeah.
It's like I need to work on this, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
you sort of see your shortcomings and you can kind of work on those, and so that's one of the biggest things I would work on. And then, just having a positive attitude and somebody that's easy to get along with is definitely going to get the job first because they're professional, they play well,
Yeah.
and they're easy to get along with, a good hang, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? So all those factor in there.
Okay,
for
so
sure.
to grow yourself as an artist, be a good person, review what you do and improve, and I guess that's really it.
And be tenacious. I mean, you got to be a go-getter, right?
Yeah.
You got to put yourself out there, and especially an artist, that's a different animal than say, like I'm mostly a side guy, so I mostly play for artists
Yeah.
and bands and that sort of thing. But from an artist perspective, yeah, you really have to go after it. You got to really want it.
Yeah.
To be able to be successful at it.
No, definitely.
Put in the time because it doesn't happen overnight for anybody, really.
Yeah.
Some people will look at an overnight success or they'll think it's an overnight success, but it really isn't. It's a lot of work that they
Exactly.
put into it.
Don't
to
see
get
everything
there.
that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Now, what phases have you gone through as a guitar player? So, for example, your tour phase. Now you're in your studio phase. So, just take me through the different phases that you've went through so far.
Yeah, definitely. I think you go from, being a young kid in a garage band with
Yeah.
a big dream and
Exactly.
and that's kind of where it sort of all started, and I think it still is like that for a lot of kids,
Yeah.
They'll see something will inspire them to become, a player or a singer or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then I think the next phase is actually getting your first gig,
Yeah.
and then just trying to get into the profession and, sort of diving a little deeper in and trying to figure out, can I actually make this work?
Yeah.
And then if I can make this work, can I actually make a living at this? And,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of go in those little steps I think, yeah, and then the next step was becoming a live player and trying to get a bigger artist gig kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? And when that happened, that was that's a big thing too.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, it's then you kind of want to get into other aspects of playing. You
Mm.
might want to get into
Yeah.
teaching your instrument, which
Have
is
you done that at all?
yeah, I've done a lot of teaching too, actually, over the
Okay,
years.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't do a lot of it now. I do, I teach a few students,
Yeah.
but I used to teach a lot too. Actually, that's as kind of sort of like a supplemental income to the profession of playing
Yeah.
live, right? So, because like I said, sometimes it's not always busy,
Hmm.
so you might have these slow times where you can do some teaching on the side and make some extra income that way as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
And then from there, you had like a tour phase as well, right? Like where
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
going around. So what are some of the places that you performed at, and what are your favorites out of those?
I would say probably Australia was one of my favorites. I mean, I haven't been to a ton of places, but that was a great place to be. People
Yeah.
people are very similar to Canadians there, so they're very responsive and really enjoy the music over
Yeah.
there. They're big time into music, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of great musicians and bands down there as well.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And then I love playing in the U.S. too, because the fans were really into it.
Hmm.
We did a lot of fun shows down there when I was with Adam Gregory. And then I would say some of the overseas stuff was fun too, like playing in France was really cool. And Switzerland was a beautiful country, and we really enjoyed the festival that we got to play there as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Wow.
it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then now you're more in your studio phase, right? So this is
Yeah.
you're still doing gigs,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this is sort of what you're transitioning into, more the recording and mixing side of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, starting to get more into that.
Yeah, and how has that been going for you so far?
It's been good. I mean, it's kind of like starting over though in a sense, because you're people don't know that you do this.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting to kind of like I just kind of made this little dream realized kind
Yeah.
of by building this studio out, and
Mhm.
we finished our basement last year, and so it's nice to get it all finished
Yeah.
and start working. And now I'm working with a couple of artists, and it's
That's awesome.
it's been very fun. And
Yeah.
and I mean, I've done a lot of sessions remotely and in studios
Mhm.
and that sort of thing too. But getting into this mixing side of things is kind of a whole new challenge.
Mhm.
It's like it's not like being a sound man, but it's sort of similar in that
Yeah.
respect. Like you have to learn a lot of relationships between the instruments and where they sit in a mix, and you can't just push the faders up and go, oh, it sounds good.
Yeah.
You need to sort of craft that stuff too, and it's kind of like a craft all on its own, maybe even more so in some ways than playing an instrument. But it's part of it. It's part of that journey. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I actually had a question from the guy that I previously did the podcast with,
Oh, okay.
Sherwin. So he got into playing guitar, and he said that he would learn a song, and then put a bunch of work into trying to remember it, and then he'd step away for, I don't know, a month or a little bit of time, and he'd come back and fully lose the ability to play that song.
Oh,
So
right.
he was asking, as a beginner, how do you get better and remember what you do? Is it just a matter of consistency and always repping it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a big factor. I mean, that sort of gave it away right there.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you step away from pretty much anything for a month, you're going to be rusty.
Yeah.
Coming back to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you gotta focus on trying to sort of be consistent, like you said. So play every day if you can,
Mhm.
even if it's only for 10 minutes. Like I sort of went through that with some of my adult students when I was teaching guitar. Like sometimes kids will have more time than, especially teenagers, they'll have more time. They'll go in their room and practice and play a lot,
Yeah.
right? So, but adult students are different because they might work all day, and maybe they got to take kids to soccer, and they don't get to play the guitar much, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, my thing to them is always like, try and practice every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes,
Mhm.
so you can kind of like sort of reintroduce yourself to it all the time,
Yeah.
as opposed to like stepping away from it and then coming back 2 weeks or a month later. You're not gonna remember it,
Yeah.
for one thing, unless you have it written down, sheet
Mhm.
music written down or something. And yeah, and then you just get incrementally better as you play every day, right?
Yeah.
It's no different than probably anything really. Just getting better at golf would be the same thing, right?
Exactly.
If you step away from it for the whole winter and you come back, it's like, oh god, again.
Yeah.
It's there, but you kind of gotta sort
Keep
of gotta
on it.
retool it and fine tune it, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
So have you since you were starting out in your basement band, have you been consistent since then? Just every day working on something?
I mostly, I would say, yeah.
Oh
Even
wow,
now, like,
that's
because I do
crazy.
work full time now, so it's hard because you get tired. You like it's like you work all day, and then, I still do a lot of freelance shows where I'm playing shows a lot of weekends, and sometimes with new artists.
Yeah,
So that's a challenge because I've got to learn new material all the time,
yeah,
right? So it can be pretty exhausting. It's not if you're doing it full time, but if you're working and just doing that
yeah,
on the weekends and that kind of thing, it's pretty challenging.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh
pretty
wow.
tough.
And what are some just funny stories from tour? Do you have any moments that you just stick out that you remember, funny stories, whatever happens to be?
Hmm. That's a that's a good one. I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff that happens and on the road. It's crazy. There's a lot of crazy stuff that
Yeah,
happens too. Like it's just so many stories with so many friends. And
yeah,
sometimes they pertain to partying and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes they're just goofy little stories too.
yeah.
I can't think of one that just sticks out offhand.
Mm.
Actually, when we played in Italy, we had to fly into Milan, and we had a 2 hour drive, and we're driving down the freeway, and we see this road sign, and it's sort of lit up, and it's got a truck on fire on the road sign. We're like,
What,
what
like
is
just a
that?
photo of a truck on fire?
No, it's like a video, not a video, but it's like a pixelated thing.
Okay, yeah,
It
yeah,
shows a truck and it shows a fire,
yeah.
and then we get a little further down the road, and there's a truck on fire. We're like, what?
So it just happened to be a coincidence, or
No, it wasn't like it's one of their emergency things,
they
basically
show
giving you a warning that's there's something
of
ahead.
exactly what's going
Might be
on?
like somebody with a flat tire or a
Yeah,
big truck rolled over or something like that.
yeah,
But it literally showed a little truck on fire, and there was a car on fire. Yeah,
yeah.
just further down the road. It was like, wow, that was so random and
Yeah,
crazy.
that's hilarious. And then what type of work are you doing now? Are you more focused on the country side of things?
From a musical standpoint.
Exactly, yeah.
I think when it comes to shows, I play a lot of country gigs because that's kind of what I've done for a lot of years. So
Yeah.
it's kind of what I'm sort of known for. So you sort of get referred to other gigs through other people doing that. But I also do some funk gigs and R&B and a little bit of pop music and all that
Oh,
kind
wow.
of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, and still some rock stuff too. A lot of country bands will even throw some rock tunes in
Yeah.
in their sets just to kind of mix it up. People like kind of a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. So we're going to take a brief intermission. We'll be back in just a minute, guys. 1 second. Hello, guys, and we're back from a brief intermission. I just wanted to get into a bit more details from one of the stories Robin has told me in the past about a tour he went on, as well as the actual meat and gravy of what's going on in the studio here, because there's a lot. But you brought up a story in the past, actually, about how you ran into Taylor Swift on one of your tours. I think it was in Nashville?
Yeah, yeah, we were actually rehearsing at the time. This was just sort of prior to the tour, but we were at SIR Studios doing. They have a rehearsal studio there, and we were rehearsing with Adam Gregory, and across the parking lot they were doing a Crossroads. I don't know if you remember that TV series that they did on MTV. I think it was, but there was a Crossroads with Taylor Swift and Def Leppard, and yeah, we ran into some of the guys from Def Leppard in the parking lot. So
Oh, wow.
it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing moment. There was a lot of those kind of moments, but
Yeah.
it was kind of funny because Adam's manager took him in to watch part of Taylor's, like they were just rehearsing at the time, but
Yeah.
they took him in to watch the show, and she got all giddy and funny in front of him because she really liked him. So
Yeah.
so it's funny that she was already a pretty big artist then, but now she's like blown up into probably the biggest artist ever
Yeah,
in the world.
she's
So
huge.
so yeah, there's the perfect example of
Yeah.
somebody who was well on her way already, but just blew up into something massive. So
Yeah, it's how long
that's
ago was
pretty
that?
cool. That would have been about 2009.
2009. So
Yeah.
that's crazy. 15
2008
years
maybe.
ago.
Yep, yep.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Time flies.
That's crazy that she was big then and what she's become now. So it
It's
really
like
showed-
iconic, yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
pretty awesome what she's done.
Exactly.
Now we'll get more into the what's going on in the studio here. So
Yeah, for sure.
we'll start off with who are some of your endorsements, because I know that you've got lots of guitars and lots of equipment here. I kind
Right.
of want to get an idea of who you're working with.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be endorsed by a few different companies, and one of them is Radial Engineering out of Vancouver, and they also do what's called Prime Acoustics. That's part of their line. So that's all the paneling that you see on the walls here in the studio. Like these things up here above us are called clouds, and I put a couple of those. Just keeps down the reflections in the room if you got a kind of a bad sounding room, right?
Yeah.
So even though this isn't a bad sounding room, it's very compact and small, so it's pretty decent sounding room. But all these panels are kind of from that company, and I'm endorsed by them, and I'm also endorsed by Yamaha Canada. And Yamaha Music Canada,
Yeah.
of course, because they sell more than just guitars and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, so some of these guitars, like this bass guitar, is from Yamaha, and they've been amazing to me. They've given me a few guitars, and I've purchased some over the years as well, and they've been fantastic actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then there's a small company out of Saskatchewan called Temple Audio,
Yeah.
and they build pedal boards. Actually, the pedal board that's on the floor
Oh,
was made
awesome.
by them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're just a fantastic little company, and they've done so well for themselves.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty cool to be endorsed by these companies, and so I get a deal on their gear, and then I just basically with the endorsement, if I'm out playing it, people see me playing it, and I can sort of advertise it on the social media sites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it just kind of keeps it out there, and it's a
Speaking
good
of which,
relationship.
yeah. So speaking of which, there'll be a short little snippet that's gonna be up on his website. Hopefully in the, or actually I don't know where it's gonna be, but I'm gonna make a little video for the studio here. If you want to check it out, where are you thinking of putting it, like on
Oh
Instagram
yeah,
or?
probably I can post it on Instagram and maybe on my website as well.
Yeah.
You betcha.
So you could
Yeah.
definitely check it out. I would. What's your Instagram name? Well,
It's
just a quick plug here.
Yeah, it's just under my actual name, Robin Pelletier. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. But we're going to get more into the details of the actual equipment now because for anyone that's wanting to work with Robin or is just curious about the actual equipment and everything, I want to get an idea of what we're working with here because we had a little listen on the studio monitors earlier and they sound awesome. So, as you spoke about the pedal board, what do we got for speakers here?
I'm just using some Dyne Audio speakers. They're kind of a standard sort of speaker, but they're a fantastic German-made speaker, and
Yeah.
yeah, they sound really good, just really clean and pure. So that's the biggest thing about
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
What else is like a vital part of a studio? Because I'm making one as well right now, but I'm still just building from the ground up. So,
Okay. Yeah.
what are some
Right.
things that maybe you didn't think of that you had to include in the setup here?
Well, the biggest thing was building the walls and the ceiling.
Okay.
We ended up
Big
using
process, right?
yeah, it's a big process, right? So when we were finishing our basement, we had to really seal off the room quite securely from any kind of noise and dampening it big time. So I ended up putting like rock salt, and then they have this new stuff called Sonopan. It's made out of kind of some kind of board like just wood,
Yep.
but it's a material that just deadens the sound in the room. It literally looks like the gyprock or whatever, like the yeah. You
What
just
is
put
what
it
is
underneath.
gyprock?
Gyprock is basically the walls there. That's like sheetrock, or some people call it, or whatever.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's the layer that goes.
Drywall is the biggest one in
Okay.
Canada, right?
Yeah.
So
So that's what goes in between the wall and I guess the other wall.
yeah, exactly, and the roof too. Yeah,
Yeah.
the roof all has this rock salt, so it's like an insulation, and then under the insulation there's the Sonopan, which is basically like drywall, and then the drywall goes over top of that.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
So it's
it's
a big
three
process.
layers of, and it's a solid core door, and it's all sealed off with weather stripping as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then I had a breakout box built into the wall, which looks like a plug-in, but you can plug in mic cables and basically it's just leads my amp into the other room where I have a insulated cabinet
Yeah.
and keep my guitar cabinet in that.
Okay.
It's like
So
an isolation cabinet, they call it.
yeah, and I was
Yeah.
curious. So, what is the purpose of keeping that in the other room? Is it just for the sake of space?
It's more for the sake of noise, to be honest. Yeah, I just want to have it as quiet in this room as possible.
Yeah.
So it's basically and space too, because this is a fairly compact studio, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like a big live room. I'm not doing drums and stuff like that in here.
Yeah.
I usually send all those kind of tracks. So I send like a core track away with acoustic guitar maybe and vocals to say a drummer, and then I'll send it to a bass player, and yeah, we sort of build the track from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The other big thing is microphones and preamps and an interface. You got to have all those things to kind of. You don't have to have preamps, but it's. I'm finding that you get such a higher, quality product when you're recording through them. It's just basically small incremental sort of builds on the studio. Like, so I'm slowly getting better microphones
Yeah.
and better preamps
Mhm.
and yeah, and just kind of building it that way.
Okay, so is
Yeah.
this something that you have just learned through doing music for so long, or is this something that you also got to learn now that you're getting more into this side of things?
Exactly. I'm learning as I go, to be honest. I mean,
Mm.
it's, I'm limited in my experience as as a studio engineer slash, mixer. So
Yeah,
that is something that I'm continuing to work on, and
yeah,
yeah, and just kind of finding out, the better quality stuff as you can afford it. You kind of pick up the stuff, that you can here and there. So preamps and I got a decent interface already, which is like an Apollo. But
yeah,
there's so many different kinds, and yeah, there's a lot of gear out there. If you're a gearhead, you
yeah,
kind of get into it after a little while and figure out what sounds best.
yeah.
Like I've been renting different microphones to see what sounds good, and
Mm.
some certain things sound great for a female vocal, but other things will sound great on a male
Yeah,
vocal, and there's just differences with different mics, right? So
yeah. Actually, I've had a friend telling me, Stro, I'm actually working with and I'm shooting a video for him. But he
okay,
was telling me how he was testing out different mics and
okay,
how you
cool.
do need particular ones for based on your voice and such. So how have you gone around is it more just trial and error? Like you try this mic out for a specific person and it's kind of iffy so you switch to another? Or is there a way to just tell this mic based on my voice?
Yeah, there's different mics that do different kinds of things. There's a lot of different types of mics. There's ribbon mics. There's like compact like pencil condenser mics, which sound good on acoustic instruments like acoustic guitar,
Yeah.
mandolin, that sort of thing. And then there's like large diaphragm mics, which are more based for vocalists. They sound great on vocalists or maybe pianos or
Mm-hmm.
and big, and they're good for room mics too because they pick up a lot of sound. So if you
Yeah.
have a really good sounding room, you can just stick up a room mic. Like a lot of drummers will do that. They'll
Yeah.
have a couple of room mics, and that
Is a
gets
room mic just the one that you
yeah.
hang from the
Usually
roof?
have it up, yeah, up closer to the ceiling or whatever,
Yeah.
up in the air, so it kind of it's picking up the sound around the whole room
Oh,
basically.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of unique, and then you can manipulate a lot of this stuff after the fact in in post production kind of thing, and just start mixing and all that
Yeah.
stuff with EQ and whatnot. But it's the one thing I've learned is it's best to capture the best possible source before you even start mixing, because then you've got less work to do basically
Yeah.
as a mixer. Right?
Yeah.
So
And then actually my friend again, Stro, he was telling me that it's almost hard to tell sometimes though when you record something, be it can sound not great now, but then when you do put it into mixing, so it sounds much better. So how do you find that good balance of like this is good enough to start mixing?
yeah, that's sometimes it's tricky, but oftentimes you can make something sound pretty good,
Yep.
even if it's not great to begin with.
Yep.
But that, like I said, it's key to kind of get a good source. But if you don't have one, there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of plugins that you can use, and physical gear too. Like there's a lot of guys that are still using, actual preamps and stuff like that. So
Yep.
I'm kind of like, people are sort of delving into both worlds a little bit. So you
Yeah.
get some actual preamps, and then you get a lot of plugins that can, I think you can fix stuff in post production for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what
make it
software do
sound
you use for
better.
that?
Well, right now I'm mostly using Logic and Luna. So those
Okay.
those two sort of DAWs, or digital audio workstations, they're called. So I'm using those two.
Yeah.
Mostly Logic because it's just nice to work with. It's been around for a long time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as we come to a close here, I got one last question for you. What is next for you in terms of music, or what are you cooking up that will come into fruition in the next bit here?
Good question. Um, I'm always working on whatever's comes my way next, I
Yeah.
guess you could say, but yeah, more writing and doing some original stuff like that, but also, yeah, just getting more into producing other artists and
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like helping them realize their dreams, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of my dream, is to help other people improve and get the best quality product that they can put out there to
Yeah.
record. Yeah,
That's awesome.
so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for this episode. This has been episode 3 of Enlighten the Youth, and I'm excited to see you guys next week, but stay tuned and follow the Instagram as well at Enlighten the Youth. Also follow Robin's page here. You could do another quick plug as well as the website. So
Okay, yeah, my website is robin-pelche.ca.
and the Instagram.
And the Instagram is just my name, yeah, Robin Pelche. Sometimes you could search me under Picker Pelche.
Yep.
That's also, yeah.
Awesome. So if you want to check him out, that's where you can find him. But yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.